Mayor, Council. Thank you everyone for being here this morning. And also want to acknowledge, Councilwoman Franklin is not here due to a medical emergency in the family. And so we will obviously miss her as part of the discussions today. You've got a bunch of materials in front of you. I'm going to go through a PowerPoint presentation of the recommended budget. So you've got a hard copy of that presentation that I'm going to make here, which is most of it, or most of the presentation, and then you'll have a hard copy of the capital improvement plan annual budget as well. So that's in your materials. You'll have a report that will show the approved budget for the current fiscal year, where we are with expenses year to date, and then the recommended. It looks like this. So I'll point to that as we get into some of the slides on more of the specifics on the line item recommendations. And then you've got a copy of the revenues for the general fund. So it's this spreadsheet like this. It's a little easier to follow along with. So try not to overload you with too many things, but that's really the bulk of it. And the last handout is the revenue breakdown for property taxes. So it's not taxes, it's the valuation for ad valorem. So, and we get that from the tax assessor's office, so that's part of it. So unless there's any questions or anybody's missing anything, I'm going to jump right into the presentation. So go ahead and do that. So I'm presenting to you the recommended budget for fiscal year 2023-2024, which will start on July 1 of this year. So with that budget, give you a little bit of overview here. It is a balanced budget. We're required to present a balanced budget to you that'll total $9,350,734 in revenue and expenses. It's a $699,297 increase from the current year into the new year. The proposed tax rate, so this is what everybody I know is anxious to hear, considering it's reval year, the proposed tax rate will be significantly reduced to 28 cents. We were at 34 cents. It'll be dropping to 28 cents. I put 28 cents in there. Our initial revenue neutral calculation was 28 cents that we received from the tax assessor's office. We did get another updated set of values that dropped it to 27.7 cents, so it's 0.3 cents. So that rounded that to 28 cents. So we're essentially at revenue neutral there at 28 cents. The real property value portion of values was obviously accounting for the biggest increase here. Is a 43% increase in real property values. Some other parts of our ad valorem valuation actually decreased, or at least the current projection has decreased. We will receive at least one more estimate from the assessor's office, and I sometimes update this again, but this is essentially the recommended budget with these values and expense estimates.
And historically, with any next, it's usually an increase for us usually.
Yeah, that next set of values is usually more, not a significant amount more. The challenge right now is, so the tax assessor, your listings, so like business personal and individual personal, people get an extension, and then it takes some time to process it. In particular, the business personal, so machinery and equipment valuations, it takes time for them to process all those. They're typically behind, and then some people get extensions. So we'll get another update of these values that will probably have a little bit more on business personal. So the biggest part is real property of the ad valorem valuation. The next is business personal, then individual personal, and then it's the valuation part of utilities, and then motor vehicles. So we'll get one more on it. It's not going to be remarkably different from this. So of that 28 cents, 18.5 cents of that portion of our tax base and what that levy produces will support services directly provided by the town. And I mentioned that because that other 9.5 cents that would make the 28 cents total rate goes to contracted fire protection services. So I've got 9.5 cents here as a recommendation. We don't know still at this point what the county is going to approve for the fire districts. So we're hoping, based on the last information from them, May 17th, the commissioners are supposed to be looking at that and imagine making a decision. I don't think they adopt the budget until June like us, but we'll have a better idea at that point. Our current contract, where most of our fire levy goes to, is Fletcher Fire and Rescue. There's a floor on there of 9.5 cents, and we can't go below. And that is proportional, that 9.5 cent amount, to what we lowered the rate from that 34 cents to 28 cents. Fletcher Fire and Rescue is at 11.5 cents, and that's a proportional amount for what the town keeps versus what we're appropriating for fire protection services.
And they're asking what, 10.5?
10.5, yeah, that's good, thank you. Their request right now is 10.5 from the county, and 10.5 to us, to the town. So this could change based on what y'all decide. The recommendation I have at this point, because it's a proportional reduction, and that's still above revenue neutral. Revenue neutral calculation for Fletcher Fire and Rescue is 8.7 cents. So this is almost a cent above. And the town is going down.
So and
6
that
cents.
is, if we would have taken that down further to the 8.7 something, then the amount that the town is asking probably would have been truly revenue neutral or even less.
Yeah, and it depends what our total rate is. I mean, if this is a part of the 28 cents,
Right.
now we brought the entire rate down a little bit and then adjusted that up. Looks a little different. So just other points, obviously revaluation played a big part in what expense requests to put in here from staff and outside agencies. That has an impact on it, this being a reval year. Most of the increases in the budget are for personnel-related expenses and equipment. The increase in residential recycling costs for our contract renewal with curbside management played an impact in this, or had a fairly significant impact. As you know, we have a new 5-year contract with curbside management. As far as the cost of living adjustment, a 4% cost of living adjustment this year, and it's due to Social Security cost of living measure going up. We did not follow exactly what Social Security measure was, because it was 8.2%, and that was just from a budgetary standpoint, just very challenging to do with this being a reval year and adjusting the rate back. And remember, we also did do a couple months ago a 2.5% adjustment. So collectively, it's really about 6.5% COLA for staff. And we're doing it under that methodology that Councilman Lance had suggested, where calculated times the total amount in salaries, and then what that amount per employee is added to, and not to each individual salary. And so it's a little more equitable as far as helping our lower paid employees to get at least a comparatively larger amount versus somebody who's paying a lot more here. So, And then health insurance. So thankfully, our health insurance premiums did not go up too much. So we only had a 5.2% increase to stay with our existing health insurance plan, and we had no increase on the dental side. So we continue to use a broker, Sky's the Limit. They merged with eBen, it's the name of the new company, and they've done a good job. We do go out and get quotes for our health insurance, and we're still with Blue Cross Blue Shield, and it's still an economical plan. Our current structure of the deductible and co-insurance amount, and we do have co-payments now. The structure of the plan is not changing to stay with this plan at this premium right now. So, and it wasn't a very bad increase, so we didn't make any adjustments to the plan. This also includes funding for a pay and classification study, a full pay and classification study. We try and do one about every 5-6 years, and it's time to do one again. So what's the impact here? We wanted, with reval and with adjusting the rate from that 34 cents to 28 cents, we wanted to kind of get a snapshot, if you will, of what does this mean to the average homeowner or average property owner, let's say, in a single family home. And so we took a sampling, Heather put a good spreadsheet together here, and we put it into the slide. And it's just kind of a cross-section of some different properties, different neighborhoods. So Presley Hill Road, Brickton Village, Wildwood, Windsor Forest, Livingston Farms, and the Village of Windstone. And the first column is the value from last year. What their tax bill is from last year is the second column. And then the third is what their new value is under reval. And then that fourth column is the tax bill at 28 cents, which is what I've got programmed in here for this budget recommendation. So, and then the difference of what their tax bill had gone up from last year to this year under 28 cents rate, and the increase from reval. That increase in value, that's not the increase in their tax bill, that's the increase in the value of the property. So make that clear. So you get an idea of kind of, going back to revenue neutral, which we're essentially a revenue neutral, doesn't guarantee someone will have no tax increase. There is sometimes a increase in that tax bill, but it does significantly reduce that impact. If we had stayed at 34 cents, or even in between, it's, because some of these, if you rerun the calculation, it's almost twice as much on the new tax bill. So as far as the increase. So that gives you a little bit of an idea. We wanted you just to see and just be very, I guess, transparent on what the impact is. You have to be careful talking about revenue neutral. Does help if you're fortunate enough to go to revenue neutral, but it doesn't guarantee that there'll be no increase in someone's tax bill. And also, it's important to point out, you haven't raised taxes in, also all the way back to 2015 was the last time the rate changed. So in the last 4 years, there's been no adjustment of the rate. So really for the last 4 years, people's tax bills stayed the same, unless you did improvements to your property, something like that.
Is this the version on Fletcher's ever decreased tax value?
The rate, no. We have decreased the rate before, yeah. Now, we have had some years where reval happened and we didn't adjust the rate. So, there was definitely an increase for people's, but this is the first one, this big of a decrease. And we've got probably should put that out too, a copy of what our tax rate's been since incorporation. So you can kind of see that. I know I have a file up here Heather's got it.
I'll save it on it.
Okay, I've got it, and I can make at a break, I can make a copy, just so y'all can see that again, because it is important to know that. But yeah.
I would recommend that you go back and label that percent increase in the house value, so it's clear as to what it is, and then have this on hand, and when somebody calls and complains about their tax bill going up by so much and stuff, actually handing it to them, because this helps to show that the value of the house went up dramatically, the tax bill should go up.
70-something.
I don't have it.
Yeah, I can go downstairs. We can change that last column and make it what the increase in the tax bill is.
Well, I like once I knew what it was,
Yeah.
I'll have that too.
Yeah.
Or I have them both.
Yeah, or having both on there, yeah. We can change the spreadsheet. And we took the people's, the individual's address off, so that wasn't, and it's all public information, but not, put that in the spreadsheet there. Okay. I'll keep going here. So as far as, I try and put some information here, just, comments on the economy, and as far as overall economic outlook for FY 23-24. And I get some of this information from different places. Some of it's the leading municipalities, and they do a publication that helps us project revenues for our state share revenues. But the projected gross domestic product, we hear a lot about GDP, pretty small. I mean, as the last I saw was about 1.6% is projected growth for 2023. Normally, we're anywhere from 3 to 5%. In the last several years, it's been hovering around 3. And whether you hit it or not, it just depends on so many different factors going on in the economy. Last year, technically, we hit a recessionary period. I don't think they want to call it a recession because jobs growth was still pretty good and people were spending money. Consumer spending was up, but we had consecutive quarters of negative growth in GDP, which is technically a definition of a recession. But we're weathering that okay. And North Carolina is doing better, I think, than the rest of the country, and our local economy is strong, thankfully. So inflation remains very high despite a drop in the index to 6% in February, but we've been hitting 8-9% inflation measures. We expect interest rates to still go up this year, so the Federal Reserve, they just recently raised it again, and so it's they're trying to slow the pace of inflation by increasing interest rates. North Carolina's, like I said, our economic outlook is minor growth, mostly because of new homes. So new housing starts happening. Manufacturing growth is helping here in the state, and building permits, so that housing starts. So that manufacturing and building of homes is there are two drivers that are helping things to stay relatively strong. And as far as local economic factors, I'll make a couple comments here on residential growth. So we've got several subdivisions in town that, one in particular, Sycamore Cottages, that's built out. So that was a lot of growth out there on the east side of town. That was 153 units, and that's just getting done right now. And then we have two single-family home subdivisions. Rutledge Road has a 90-unit and a 62-unit development there, which we all know about. That's in different phases of construction. And then BSC Holdings, so that is the 311-unit development, just right out on this north side of Town Hall here. And so those are just different phases of development happening right now. And then, excuse me, our commercial industrial growth is continuing to be strong. We had low impact technologies happening in 2021 coming to town. Then we had canvas prints last year. Then Tagio, which is the RFID tags. So we had them coming in this year. So that commercial industrial growth is really helping our tax base to remain broad. So that's helping. And then, excuse me, retail sales is, I would say, expected to be moderate for the next year. It has really helped us that our retail sales growth has been as strong as it has. Our revenues, which I'll talk about in just a little bit, are really been bolstered by retail sales activity. So residential growth is still fairly strong with our single-family home developments on Rutledge Road. BSC Holdings, hopefully that'll be starting this summer. We'll be doing site improvements out there. And then we're still getting, again, a decent amount of industrial growth here with manufacturing. So just some.
That Tagio, that's just a small part of what's available over there, isn't it?
Yes, so that's in the former Continental site. So Continental leaving definitely hurt us. And them coming in, it's not taking up the entire site, but it's, I think about 50%.
Was it that much?
I
Wow.
think, or maybe more than 30,
I think it's like 30%,
40%.
30, 40, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, so Tagio is going in where Continental was. Excuse me, and then as far as revenue outlook, got several comments on, so obviously the biggest part of our revenues is coming from property taxes. So our ad valorem increase, and if you want to go to the revenue spreadsheet, that's follow along a little bit on this. It's this spreadsheet here. Our ad valorem values are increasing, are projected to increase by $1,421,664,000, up to 1.7, almost 1.8 billion approaching. So that 1,769,970,000 is the jump. The largest portion, obviously, of that increase is from real property values increasing. Business personal values decreased by 30%, at least partially due to Continental leaving, so we just talked about that. We had a normally, sometimes at the beginning of the year, the business personal is negative, but we were surprised it dropped that much. We think some of that's due to the hole created by Continental leaving. Now, Tagio is helping some in their Tagios, but it's still left a hole there. So, and then our individual personal property values increased by 31%, and that's your mobile homes, boats, things like that. And then motor vehicles decreased by 2%. So if you look at this spreadsheet, so that's our breakout of values on property values. We've got real property values at $1,447,000,000, business personal at $197 million, and then individual personal at $11.5 million. Public service values at $16,386,000, and then motor vehicles at $97 million. So you see there's some decreases in there on the business personal going down, and then motor vehicles decreasing, and public service property. And public service property is the valuation on utilities. And then just other comments on revenue outlook, and going back to kind of following the spreadsheet, our property taxes, so a 4% increase, or $187,548 in actual levy on the real and personal property tax side. A large increase or additional $117,500 in our interest on investments due to fund balance and interest rates being up. So we had, with our fund balance being up and our reserves being high and interest rates going up, we had quite a bit of a jump in our interest earnings. And so Heather's moved a bunch of that to the capital management trust fund, and that's helped considerably. So, and then next, a 5% increase or additional $37,771 in utility sales tax. And then a 17% increase or additional $364,600 in local sales tax. So our sales tax is just doing incredibly well. I think that's going to slow down, but it's something that's just been really robust the last couple of years. And we could just take a quick break. Just gonna take a quick break. Okay. Yeah.
I'll just 15 minutes.
Yeah. Do that.
Yeah, I'll motion to recess for 15 minutes.
Thank you.
That's what.
Yeah.
Motion for second. All in
Thank
favor,
you.
say aye.
Aye. I was just going to mention on sales tax. It's the bottom bullet. That's our second largest source of revenue, and that going up by $364,000 is just, it's been very helpful trying to put together a balanced budget here. If we didn't have the growth happening in our sales tax, things would be much more challenging here putting this together. So we get our projection there on that, or different information on what the percentage increase is going to be from the League of Municipalities. And so they do a publication, and that and some of our other state share revenues are based off of that calculation. So that's been a tremendous help. Some of the other increases in revenue, we got a 14% increase or additional $13,000 in recreational activities. So this is revenues coming from summer day camp and park shelter rentals, other things like that. 70% increase or additional $6,200 in ABC law enforcement revenues. So that is obviously that's money's coming to based on sales at our ABC store, and there's a portion of the ABC revenues that goes to just help our general fund, and then a portion of that goes to ABC law enforcement. So it has to go for law enforcement activities based on ABC sales. A large increase you can see here, additional $53,500 in grant funding for the Greenway Planning Grant. So this is that grant that Eric Rufa had applied through the MPO, And then that money is, it's a $70,000 grant. There's a $14,000 match or $14,500 match on that, that the town provides, and then $53,500 actual grant funds. We got a 13% increase or additional $250 in concession stand revenues. So we increased our fee for concessions, and we're leasing that to Battles, and so a little bit more money there. A 7% increase or additional $20,000 in ABC distribution. So that total amount of ABC revenues that we get is, well, this current year at $270,000, jumping up to $290,000. So sales have been great at the ABC store, and at some point that's got to plateau. I'm just not sure when that's going to happen, but that's another good shot in the arm of revenues in our general fund.
How can the general ABC go up by 7%, but the law enforcement part go up by 70%? The numbers haven't, the percentages haven't changed, have they?
It's just, last year was probably underestimated, and so with the increase, it looks so dramatic just because last year's what actually came in was probably projected a little low.
It's not very much money though. The ABC law
Right.
enforcement is
62.
yes. Well, it's actually 15,000 is what the new amount would be.
Okay.
The current year budgeted for ABC law enforcement side is 8,800. So it's not a big increase. So looking at revenues that decreased in the general fund, we have a 16% decrease or drop of $49,483 in motor vehicles, a 33% drop or drop of $5,000 in 2022 taxes in prior years. So that is where Candy and Susan are collecting on prior year delinquent taxes. Then we had a 5% decrease or drop of $1,700 in beer and wine tax. So that was a little surprising because beer and wine sales are generally pretty good. I think what happened is last year it was budgeted a little bit high, and so we were missing the mark on it. And then with the projected increase, we get that information from the league, and I think the info they give us is good. What's happening, and they commented on that a little bit as well, is spirits, so liquor is eating into some of that. But it is, generally speaking, the beer and wine sales are ticking up. And it's not a lot of revenue for us in our general fund. The total beer and wine portion is at 33,900, so it's not a lot. And then a 17% decrease or drop of 500 in police revenue.
Yeah, you skipped over the one on cable. That just continually keeps going down, doesn't it?
Yeah, so that's video sales, it's called, and it's a tax that comes through the state. It's a state share of revenue, and it's based on activity of our cable and satellite revenues. So satellite TV and cable. With people continuing to cut the cable and go to streaming services, this just keeps declining for several years. It's been going down.
So as far as budget requests, they initially came in
almost $1 million above prior year budget. Some of the things, and I go through and I make some different cuts to the different requests that come in to help us get to a balanced budget. Some of the highlights of some of the things coming in that brings our budget up. One of them is part-time assistance is in here for the police department. So our chief had talked to you about additional help for the evidence room and then also for their range program. So this is bringing in a part-time assistance for when they qualify at the range, and then also some part-time assistance with managing, and when I say managing, the evidence room, and he's talked to you a little bit about that, is a huge responsibility for any police department. You have to make sure that things that can be thrown away or disposed or destroyed are done properly through the court system, and then also just cataloging, inventorying what you have. So that's a really important thing. Funding in here for the full pay and classification study. Agenda and meeting management software helps staff in streamlining the process for managing agenda items. I didn't have this in here initially, and so my apologies to Christine. She had this in the requested, and it would have been in IT's budget, but it's a specialized software that helps manage so the agenda items coming in and then follow up on agenda items. It's called Civic Plus, and it's something that primarily town clerks are using this, but also other staff feed into as we develop agenda items, submit them, follow up on them. I don't know, any other highlights?
Well, there's no
Civic
paper
Plus.
involved. Everything's electronic. There'd be a portal for the public to see that we put online for them to get anything they needed. And it would save a lot of trees and a lot of time and effort. There's also an automatic part of it that generates a template for the minutes, so then you just have to fill in the basics. And City Vendorville uses it, and Jill over there, I talked to her a couple months back. She's brand new with them. She left her bar and went to work with them, and she just says it's absolutely amazing. And then everybody would have their folder to access, to pull out whatever they needed when they wanted, department heads as well as council. And I went through a brief video training of it online. I have that. I can send that to you if you'd like to see it. But it's really efficient.
So when you
And,
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just probably said, that sounds very efficient.
well, that is, like I said, it would save so many trees. We would eliminate a whole bunch of paper. And even Matthew talked about with your monitors, you'd be able to see it right in front of you, you know, on a monitor instead of shuffling through a notebook or a bunch of paper.
I was looking at this is it, right?
Yes, that's the sample so that y'all can see.
On page 2, it says open records request.
Yes, it helps with that. And we've been pretty fortunate in my 15 years here. What public records requests we have had have been very minor. And usually, depending on, I usually get a meeting clerk, but I don't have, I don't do financial, whatever. So I'm able to forward that to the department that does handle that. And it would store that as well.
Okay. It's under my perception that council's been, or what this council's been approved, I guess adamant about those types of things and just around the transparency, so that might be a good.
Well, and like I said, that's why I like the public portal and whatever that would be available for the people to, public residential portal, for them to pull up and access it when they want to do. That's where the agendas would go.
And you said there'd be like a folder for council as well.
Council
Is that-
would each have their own folder with their agenda stuff in it, their agenda packet
Awesome.
and maps and whatever's going on the agenda that time. So, and they would be able to manage that themselves, keep or delete or store things that they want to use. Or, you know, or it'd be available whenever they needed it, you know, online with through the software.
Sounds efficient and effective.
Yeah.
You know, we talked about increasing feedback and so on with the public. Would it make sense that between the agenda meeting and the regular meeting, once we get past the agenda meeting, finalize the agenda, just take a copy of the agenda and post it on the town's Facebook page, so it's actually pushed to anybody who's signed up for our Facebook page. That way, people will at least see what we're discussing for that month. I know they can go out and find it themselves, but I think it's better if we can push
Well,
it
Yeah,
to
then
it.
just post a link.
You're right, and everything is online, and even Mark and I have talked, and he's had me now, I didn't used to post draft minutes to the agenda. I would wait until you all approved them. But now I've started, once I finish the minutes and basically go over, look for
Right.
spelling errors, but like the agenda reviews up there, the agenda meetings, not we just had it Monday night, but so that people are already seeing the draft minutes and they're available for people to look at online before they've been approved, but they're listed as a draft there so that people know that. And once it's signed and everything by Preston, once it's been approved, then it gets posted. As soon as
I just know a lot of people, they may have a specific interest enough to go out and look at the town website, but I would imagine the majority of people never go out looking at the town website for agenda. But if we posted it to the Facebook, I think it could be seen by a lot more people, just an idea.
Sounds like this will make it easier for them to be able to navigate the agenda.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's 10,000 for the purchase of the software, and then there's some ongoing annual maintenance fees.
Subscription. Sorry.
Yeah, so it would fall back under our IT budget for an annual subscription cost, and it's 4,000 a year ongoing. I think that was right, Christine, after.
Yes, yes.
After the first year.
After the first year, there's that maintenance fee or whatever they call it.
Yeah. So,
Can we go ahead, excuse me, can we
Go
go
ahead.
ahead and plan at the end of the first year to give us a report of how well it's going?
Sure.
So other overall general expenditure increase activities. So our ongoing monitoring of the town center project, you'll see that under professional services, we have a line item for that. Our hope, obviously, is to re-engage our developer and get them back under contract, or go to a new group. But as you know, we're actively discussing with Lewis Real Estate Group and what else to get our transportation, the mitigation requirements resolved, or at least under an agreement of how much is going to be contributed, and then we get that done.
Just out of curiosity, does that group know that we've had some discussions with other groups?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The interest in the property has definitely ticked up since we did demo and some other things, and then, knowing that agreement had actually been terminated or lapsed. We're going to remain hopeful we can get them back under. They did a tremendous amount of work on this, on the design, and putting the uses together, something that we can agree on, that was a good thing. Anyways, that's, there's some expense in there for that. Increase in support of the Partnership for Economic Development for Industrial Recruitment Extension efforts. So we do a general support payment to the Partnership. The other municipalities do as well in the county for their recruitment retention efforts. It's at $20,000 this year. It's been at that amount for a number of years now. It'll be going up to $25,000 And then also the Economic Investment Fund, or you've heard them talk about the EIF, and that helps with identifying potential industrial sites and putting them through the certification process. So, decrease in cost for stormwater. So Eric Rufus talked to you about our MS4 permitting. We had the costs up quite a bit for consultant assistance, and we're kind of, you can see that's starting to come back down as we get a better idea on the program costs required. I mentioned the grant, the planning grant for the Greenway extension. We have a grant match in there for that planning grant. Biggest individual purchase here that's recommended in the budget is this integrated body-worn camera in-car camera system in the police department. As you know, we have not had body-worn cameras for our PD, and we wanted to more efficiently upgrade the equipment. Our in-car cameras were getting old, getting hard to find replacement parts. So with the purchase of this system, we'll have an body-worn camera and in-car camera system that is fully integrated. And that's probably, well, it is our largest single purchase that's recommended for this budget, but, you know, we feel it's a good, important purchase for our police operations for a number of reasons.
Have we purchased it yet?
No.
We can't purchase it until budget's adopted.
I saw that I think Henderson County is getting all new ones too.
I hadn't seen
I
that.
thought I saw that somewhere, and I just wondered, is there any reason for us to try to get the same as they have, or better than two totally different systems?
It may be a similar one that we're purchasing, I'm not sure.
I think there's only 2 or 3 big.
Yeah, there's not a lot of vendor choices, I don't think, out there.
Or piggyback, maybe get a discount for a larger purchase. If it's the same.
We can make a note to check.
Just
with
check
the-
with
Yeah,
them.
check with the chief about that. You got that, huh? So hardware and system upgrades, so you'll see 3 of those. Matthew Horton with One You Service, I talked to you a little bit about that. That's to improve our security and efficiencies. We have an increase in our household fee for recycling services with curbside management. It's going from $3.07 to $4.20 per household per month. And that's how we've always done it, and it's established in our contract that way as a monthly household fee. And due to inflationary factors, that's why the large increase. And I know I've talked to you about this in our contract negotiations with curbside management. A dump bed lift and UTV purchase of Public Works to help improve efficiencies there. And then a SCAG mower and UTV purchase for Parks and Recreation. And I'll talk a little bit more about those when I get to the individual departmental budgets. The expense requests, so funded here, are all within that lower rate of 28 cents. And obviously, we have other parts of our general fund revenues that support what we do beyond property taxes, what's generated by that 28 cents. And I didn't talk a lot about, so our 3 largest sources of revenue too within the budget. Property taxes obviously is the biggest one. It hovers around 50% of our budget. Second largest is sales tax, and then the third is utility sales tax. And utility sales tax is revenue from an excise tax on electricity, pipe natural gas, and telecommunications. So those are our 3 largest sources that contribute to our general fund for the services we provide. I made some additional reductions, additions in some line items in order to keep us on track of expenditures, and also where I felt cuts were needed that get us to balance here.
So with that, I'm going to go into the individual department budget highlights. And keep trucking here. And I know I kind of abruptly took a break there a little while ago. If you need to stop and do that at any point, please let me know. Governing board would be the first departmental oversight, or excuse me, overview. We had just a small decrease here in the overall funding for the department, going from $54,788 to $54,634. There was an increase in the salaries line for the 4% COLA, going from 40,000 up to 41,000. Increase in the FICA line that goes in conjunction with obviously an increase in salaries from 3,200 to 3,300. We had a decrease in our travel and training from 5,500 to 3,500. The amount that's being used for travel and training has been so low. A lot of y'all don't do a lot of travel. This covers clerks' travel, but that will be enough for Christine's travel expenses. And I try and track based on where we've spent year to date, where we spent last year, what's being requested for the new fiscal year, when we try and project out these line items. And so that's why that dropped down that much. And again, y'all don't do much travel training expenses, so kind of the need wasn't there. And so a little bit of an increase in liability insurance from $358 to $462. Administration, so this is town manager, assistant town manager, our tax collector, deputy tax collector, town clerk, those are all within administration. Had a moderate increase in the total departmental from $650,000 to $688,000. Largest part of the increase is in salaries from $455,000 up to $483,000. That's for COLA and merit pay, and then some moderate increases on the fringe benefit line items. Small decrease in our fuel expense from 800 down to 500. That's just due to less usage. That's the admin car for people who use admin, the Equinox. A slight increase in our motor vehicle expense from 13,400 up to 13,800. And that's due to the cost for, this line item covers the cost for collection motor vehicles. It used to be, we were getting that from the, years ago now, from the tax assessor's office. Now it goes, the state collects it and comes back. Actually, Department of Motor Vehicles. So that's admin, and stop me on any of these if you have any questions. Professional services, so that's the departmental that we have that's covering our audit, legal fees, other types of consultant fees, town center consultant fees. All those things are within professional services. So a moderate increase in our departmental budget here from $155,719 to $198,022. This is due primarily to the cost of consultant fees. Small increase in our public account line from $17,000 to $17,500. Our economic development line increased from $55,865 to $66,380. That was due primarily to increase in fees on the Partnership for Economic Development. A little bit, this also are incentives that we pay to some of those manufacturers I mentioned before, paid out of that line item. Apple Country Transit increased from $7,500 to $13,142. That's our match request from the county. There's a mistake in the report here, this one that shows you that has our current year approved
where we are spent through the day, and then the requested amount, and under professional services there, it was just a mistake we made putting that in on the approved amount. So you'll see it's at $12,854, was actually approved at $7,500. That's what we paid out last year. And every year, for the last number of years, you talked about this line item approval, and I don't know if that's something you all want to discuss more now, or if you're comfortable with going, this is calculated, they have a specific formula the county uses to calculate the municipality's match for Apple Country Transit, for our transit services, and that's for fixed route and also for a paratransit. I don't know if you're comfortable, I've got it in 13, it's not a tremendous amount of match requirement, but, so.
Seems like more people from our area are using it. I've seen people numerous times on that corner, like you on Fanning Bridge Road or Rutledge Road. Numerous times I've seen people standing there waiting for the bus to come. So I have no problem with up a little bit on that.
To the 13,142,
Yeah.
that's their match request. I don't have that problem with it
And that was one of our OCO low spots, was transportation, so.
either. Yep.
Yeah. But the average person's not going to use it.
I'm good.
The service.
Service purpose.
Yeah.
It's not really there for the average person.
That's where some of the locations a little bit better. There's one right here, when first going Fan Bridge, it's lots of blocks traffic. That's it. That's,
Sounds like
Good.
pretty big.
Better year for our contribution to Apple Country Transit, so that's, and they, the county does a good job with running that. I know it's not a lot of stops here, but it is getting fairly decent usage, and it is an important service to the public here, particularly that paratransit. That's a nice thing for people with disability to get that. They pick you up from point to point with it. So go into planning department.
And more, you mentioned, but that elections, I assume might be taken out at some point.
Yes, I'm sorry, I didn't mention anything about that. So we're scheduled, and I mean, as you know, it's a municipal election year, and whenever municipal elections are held, the elections office charges us, and that's the projected amount that they would charge. With the bill that's out there to move you to even numbered year elections, there's a possibility, and it looks like that bill's moving forward, that you won't have a municipal election. In order to get that, the overlapping terms to even out, for lack of a better word, they would extend out the current terms, so for our two districts to next year. So there's a possibility that comes off.
Did you ever talk to the election board about the possibility of maybe waiving that fund? Or them tying up our building for weeks on end?
I have not. And that's something we can't bring forward to them.
I mean,
just reduce the rate.
that's a long period when you add the early voting period to be tying up our building. We're paying all the utilities and everything.
Yep.
And have that conversation. See what they say. And it is, I mean, it's worked out good for the public, but it is, it is an expense to us, and the wear and tear and everything that happens here in the building.
I'll say regardless whether they want to give us a discount rate or not, I think the election should stay here because it is a huge benefit for the public.
Yeah.
Regardless.
Yeah.
So moving from professional services into
Planning Department, so significant increase in the total appropriations here, going from $197,879 to $253,157. The biggest part's because of the planning grant, so that adds $70,000 of expense for that greenway extension. And again, the planning grant is a planning grant. It's not funding construction of the greenway. It's looking at mapping out the route and getting a up-to-date cost estimate for a preferred route. But it is important because it's a means to an end. As far as with that, it improves our chances to get some other funding from the MPO if we put in for it to actually pay for the construction of the greenway.
So that study that was the one that was gonna go all the way over to potentially tapping into.
Yeah, all the way over past, all the way to the French Broad.
Broad.
Yeah. Yep.
So would that be with the planning grant? So there had to be just one of the ways that we can extend out the greenway, correct?
Yes, yeah.
So, and I guess that was your question, are they looking at how we can attach to the larger greenway networks as well?
Right, so the larger greenway system that the county's been looking at would run along the French Broad River. So this planning grant, it's not looking at the town necessarily paying for the whole extension of the green, because it does technically, when you go under I-26, would be going outside our town limits. And then it would basically be running along Cane Creek. So next to Meritor, once you go underneath the interstate, you're going outside the town limits there. It would follow along Cane Creek until you hit French Broad. So that area from, I-26 leaving down to the French Broad is technically outside of town. I don't know if we would get into funding the whole thing down there, but that's another future discussion. But it does get the planning work done. It sets us up nicely to apply for a grant from the MPO that pays for the actual construction cost.
Yeah, even though we don't own the property, that short stretch to get to the river, it's very high in our interest to get that included with ours, so we can get from point A to point B.
Sure. Thank you. Yep. So slight adjustment in the salary and fringe benefit lines due to merit pay and COLA. A little bit of an increase in the postage from $600 to $700. Slight increase in fuel from $200 to $300. Department supplies increased from $1,000 to $1,200. And it's just for new chairs. It's all their department supplies, not just chairs. Stormwater program decreased from $52,048 down to $28,000. This may be adjusted back up in the following year or years as we get further into the requirements for staying in compliance with our MS4 permit, so the stormwater quality and stormwater flow issues. But it's as Eric's been implementing this, some of our cost estimates for consultant fees has come down a bit. Town facilities. So town facilities is, it's a little bit of a catch-all here. This is, we've got a discretionary, we've got postage, it's utilities for all of our facilities with the exception of Parks and Rec. Travel and training, some expense in there for that. Our wellness program, our newsletter, department supplies, and so it's kind of a miscellaneous catch-all. So small decrease in the total departmental from $152,040 to $151,419.
The postage line decreased from 6,300 to 5,000. This is just based on anticipated usage. Some of what's helped us get our postage out a little bit is our newsletter, which is largely distributed electronically, so that's brought some of that down. But that postage is also including our tax billing too. Utilities line increased from 62,750 to 64,750, and that's due to the rate hike for electricity. Duke's going up by 8 or 9% on their rate fees. So advertisements line decreased from 3,600 to 2,600. This is due to decreased usage. Our wellness line increased from 7,500. Increased from 7,500 to 8,000. And that's just based on increase in the cost of items. Wellness is like covering our Christmas luncheon and
Our EAP program.
So, and then contract services decreased from 25,000 to 20,000. One of the reasons that total departmental fell a little bit, we had the gateway sign in there, and there's not another gateway sign program for next year. So when we get this one on the south end of town done, before we look at another. So that's town facilities. I'll move into the police department, and again, stop me if you've got questions in any of this. Police department, fairly significant increase in their overall budget from that 1.9 million up to just over 2.3 million. Most of the expense in the increases, of course, is due to body worn camera and in-car camera purchase. That's just over $234,000. We have part-time reserve line item added for our evidence room in range duties. I talked already a little bit about that. And I'll mention in the next slide how much that is that's programmed in there, and that's a new line item for us. The next largest area of expense would be associated with just adjustments to salary and fringe with COLA, and they're included in that. So the part-time, the total amount for the part-time assistance to help with evidence in the range is 20,000 in there. That's a new line item again. Our postage line increased from $700 to $1,000, and that's for contact letter requirements. There's a new requirement with the detectives that this is a state law requirement where there's victims of crime. They have to get these notification letters to let them know follow up and rights and things like that. So that's a new requirement. Travel and training, I decreased this a little bit. The chief had decreased it down from 14 to 3. I was recommending it down to 12. This is just based on usage. Fuel expense increased from 61,860 to 66,870, and that's due to increased fuel costs. Our department supplies line increased. That's the big jump there for the body worn cameras, up to 263,000. So if you take out the 243,000 for the body worn camera and in-car camera system, really their overall operational increase is about 100,000, a little less than that this year, which is fairly moderate. And we don't anticipate any big equipment requests next year for the PD. So
is it the 263 or is it the 234?
well, there's other things in department supplies that are covered beyond the purchase of the body-worn camera and in-car camera. It's other departmental supply things, the file cabinet, ammo for the range, other file-related, paper,
So it's everything else in there, and then at 234. So the base really, for that line item is not increasing. It's just that equipment purchase item that brought that up. So if you took that out, I think it takes it almost back to level from the prior year.
Is
Their
that,
base is 29,000.
Yeah. So that comes out, and that's back to
is
that.
that in-car camera line item, is that for all vehicles, including any that were projected on purchasing?
Yes. It hits them all. So, all right. Next one. Just some other line items within the police department. The physical drug line decreased from 5,400 down to 5,000. That's just due to slightly less usage, and that's on screening applicants for officers who work in the department, new applicants. Uniforms line decreased from 25,500 to 18,000. This is just due to fewer new positions starting in there. Our network subscription line increased a little bit from 10,000 to 11,002 for additional license purchases for this power DMS. So last year before, the chief had purchased this power DMS. It's a software system that helps to do a lot of things. One of the things is manage their policies and help with updates to their policies. It also has a function they wanted to add to run credit reports for background investigations, and that's on screening for new applicants. So that's what that helps do.
Do they actually run credit reports and so on for any of the town's employees that we need to?
Not for all of them. Like when you hire a manager, there was a credit background investigation. I'm trying to think, you haven't hired a lot of
It's part of it, it's part of their process, they require to do
Right.
credit check, along with a whole bunch of different background investigations. And then for Mr. Other employees, we do a background check on them, and only if it's like a finance related job or something like that, we wouldn't choose a credit check. It's just-
Now, what about the guys with the like the baseball coaches or the part-time workers that work at the daycare?
Yes, so
Do
they're all,
we
they all,
run all
we
those
do a background
ourselves?
check.
Okay.
So we use mine for business and Hendersonville, the process for us.
I mean, there's criminal background checks done on all employees. Credit
Is something that-
yeah, and you know, it's on a case-by-case basis what we're doing on all the police department hires. It's a pretty exhaustive background check when you bring a new officer in.
Well, it should be.
And I think like the coaches and stuff, theirs is every 3 years that they have to watch that video and do the whole 9 yards, I think, every year for those
Yeah.
people out there.
We don't hire the coaches. That's all, again, just a reminder, it's all separate through the baseball league. I don't know if it's what it's called, Fletcher Rec Park now, or whatever the proper name of it is. So we just rent the field space to them.
Right.
That cover all the. Yep. So let's see. I guess I'll move into IT now, unless there's any other questions on the police department budget. So on IT, again, One Who Serves has continued to do a great job of providing our IT support. You see Matthew Horton here on Tuesdays, and I think it's fair to say staff have been impressed with what they've done to basically help us operate pretty smoothly on a day-to-day basis. And so they know their stuff, and I think they've done it at a reasonable cost for the town by outsourcing it. It's a slight increase in our overall departmental budget from 282,174,000 up to 319,450.
but it's mostly due to some capital-related projects being in their operating budget, and I'll mention those in the next bullet down. Matthew had gone through several decision packages, he had presented those, and it's mostly security-related items, and some of it's just old things that need to be replaced. The Microsoft Cloud Service upgrades, security thing. The server for Town Hall is just old and they can't get certain, like backup parts for it. It reaches a certain age. And then the network switches, it's the same thing. So the cloud service upgrade, new server, and then the network switches at Town Hall. So we have this contract services line, so that's our fee to them for labor to provide the service. They did some accounting thing really on their side, and the net difference I think is only 10,000 here on this. But so even though our contract line goes up from 62,180 to 106. And again, that's mostly how they're processing invoices. The dues line, which they moved a bunch of the expense up there, went down. So our dues line decreased from 45,964 down to 13,720, with that shifting of the costs up to contract services. So very little increase in the overall, contractor labor costs. Subscriptions line increases from $57,530 to $69,030 for Civic Plus software purchase, which we talked about earlier. The capital line increases from $68,000 to $83,000, and that's for the 3 system improvements that I mentioned earlier: the network switches, the server, and then the MS cloud upgrade.
So with their dues go, they change it from what you presented, I guess, to us the first time?
No, it's the same as what he had presented to you.
So it looks like he presented to us at 8,620, and went to 13, so.
Oh, the,
Plus the decision package for the cloud services.
Okay, so they added the decision
Yeah.
package, so, okay.
but that should be everything that was from the March presentation. The only thing that got added in, and that was an oversight, the Civic, the software that town clerk uses primarily, that new one that I mentioned earlier, that got added in. Yeah. Yeah, Civic Plus. So I don't know if there's any other questions on that. Move to contracted services, fire and rescue. So again, we got 2 fire department. It's primarily Fletcher Fire and Rescue that we contract for fire services, and then we have Bills River Fire and Rescue on one parcel. It's the old Continental property, and that's based on a contract that goes back to annexation when we annexed over into where the Continental property was, the former PG property. So that goes off in 2026, and we won't be paying anything more to Bills River Fire and Rescue on that as of that year. So it is what it is. And part of it was somewhat of a legitimate because of annexation. Why it got extended, I don't know, but it's almost rolling off here soon. So to talk on the Fletcher Fire and Rescue side, which is where most of our appropriation for fire and rescue services is going to them, the rate that I was recommending was at 9.5 cents. They were at 11.5 cents. So it'd be 9.5 cents of the town's 28-cent tax rate that's presented in this budget. The total appropriations at that 9.5 cents based on our value would increase from $1,505,975 to $1,646,434. We also budget 24,000 in there. Sometimes we wind up having, like we did this year before, have to spend a little bit more than that. It's basically like a contingency. So when you adopt the budget, it's an estimated budget on the billing, and the tax assessor, when they give us the scroll to actually bill in the summer, it's sometimes higher than what we budgeted, it often is. And then, so this tries to reconcile basically more tax
We're
revenue.
budgeting, they're 9.5 cents off what the current value we have. So once we get the bill, the value goes up, and we owe Fletcher Fire. So we usually wait till the audit's complete, review it, and then pay them additional funds if needed.
And it's based on, not collected, but
Yeah,
billed.
at total bill.
Total bill, yeah. So there's always a little bit of a difference from what we budgeted to what gets billed. And then, you've got through the year, there's tax releases and then there's things added, discoveries that are added in. So that affects all of it as well. And then the revenue neutral rate, I mentioned it earlier, but again, the neutral rate is calculated by the tax assessor. Right now it's 8.7 cents for Fletcher Fire and Rescue's fire district. Because remember, they provide fire services not just in Fletcher proper, but out to an area, the Fletcher area, that covers unincorporated parts of Jefferson County. So they'll get an appropriation from the county based on those areas and the unincorporated parts, and then from the town. So they publish for their tax district what that revenue neutral rate would be. And we still don't, we don't know at this point what's going to get approved by the commissioners. We hope by May 17th, we'll have an idea of what that's going to be.
You had, this, I'm curious, I know they're asking for 10.5 or more. What's the difference between 10.5 and 9.5? How much money of revenue would that be? Just oh,
174,000. Yeah, penny now.
So 170,
770 something.
170,000.
I think that's, when I budget, I do it at 99% collected. So I think right now penny's going to be right around 175,000, somewhere in there, 176,000. That's based on our valuation of 1.769 billion. So if you wind up adjusting the rate up, let's just say, for the sake of argument, if you go to 10.5 cents instead of 9.5 cents, I may talk to you about making some other adjustment within CIP. When you get to CIP, you're going to see we have more revenue that's being generated based on the tax rate that's dedicated to it than we do projects in year 3 of the CIP. So you could put that excess revenue to make up the difference if you wind up appropriating 10.5 cents. Let's just say instead of 9.5 cents to Fletcher Fire and Rescue. Just a thought. We get there to that, I'll mention that again. So, and again, I tried to look at a proportional decrease. So, again, Mills River, very small part of the allocation for fire and rescue services. It's only on the property where Continental formerly was. They were at 11 cents. They're asking for 10 cents from the county. I just put 10 cents in on our spreadsheet to calculate this. So the total appropriations for Mills River would decrease pretty significant here. from $107,959 down to $20,465. The big reason, this big drop in valuation on that property because Continental left, and then we've got Tagios in, which is.
They would be billed as of January 1st, they weren't in as of January
Okay,
1st.
so,
So right now, there's no business personal for Tevis as of January 1st, so all that value is gone.
The contract we have with Mills River, are we tied in at a minimum of 10 cents?
it is as determined by what the county sets. That's what the language says in our agreement with them.
So if the county comes in like we are at 9.5, then we would drop it down to 9.5.
Yes.
Okay.
And like, again, it's, I got 9.5 programmed in for Fletcher Fire and Rescue. This is 10 for Mills River, but I think they're, I don't have it in front of me right now, the revenue neutral rate for, oh yeah, it's right, well, forgot I had it in there. Yeah, so revenue neutral rate, 0.5 cents for them, as determined by the assessor's office.
I don't see how the county can keep it up full amount. They're gonna have to back it off.
I would think the rate's gonna be decreased for the fire districts. Now, whether they're gonna go to revenue neutral, I've tried to get a feel from them, and I haven't had the information back to know if they think it's gonna go revenue neutral or somewhere close to it. So, I guess we'll see middle of the month. That could have an impact on, obviously, what this is going to be when I'm presenting to you in June at the public hearing. As far as public works, a moderate increase in our total departmental appropriations from $1,255,498 up to $480,639. Got the purchase of dump bed and the dump bed lift and utility drain vehicle to help improve safety and efficiency. So, Jabo, I talked to you about this dump lift bed. It's basically a gate that, a lift gate that comes off and like the white goods, where they can put that on there and lift it up rather than have to pick it up and put it in there. We all know how much heavier like washing machines have become trying to do white goods pickup. So, which is a service we provide, so it helps with that. And then the utility drain vehicle, the UTV, their golf cart is kaput. It's not working anymore, and so this is to help them moving up and down 25 and maintenance projects that they do, various things. Town hall security improvements, and this is per that report or review from the leading municipalities. Jabo talked to you about it. We're doing this in phases. We've got the first part of that underway to do changing out the locks, so all the kind of public access points, doing keypad. That's funded in this current fiscal year. This new fiscal year would be for the second part of it, which would be a more complete enclosure and administration coming in. We talked about the glass and that, so that's that piece. Recycling, which we talked a lot about. Again, our household fee going up. You gotta remember, our households are also going up too. We've got new subdivision growth. Some of those homes may be coming online, the ones on Rutledge for the two developments. In this current fiscal year, we've been adding them with Sycamore Cottages, so that's adding expense. And then, of course, we redid our contract, and the household monthly fee went up from $307 to $420 a month.
Which is still a good deal.
It is still a good deal, and it bore out based on comparison research to what other municipalities are being charged for recycling services on a monthly frequency or rate.
Plus, at this point, we couldn't do it ourselves for that rate anyway.
No, I did the report, I shared that with you, where we were trying to calculate out what if we brought it in-house versus continuing with curbside, and it is still a better deal. They're very affordable, and, I mean, good service. I mean, we get, there's some issues from time to time. They've gotten better and better, but it's pretty consistent, and, they all recycle, and, you hear from neighbors, and we don't get a lot of complaints that come in from curbside, and they do try to jump on things quickly if there's an issue. So, it's all high rated in our section. So, so some other just highlights on their line items. So salaries line, we have moderate increase to our merit and COLA adjustments from $416,935 up to $463,454. The fringe benefit line items increase for merit and COLA adjustments. Increase in utilities from $115,589 to $127,589. We probably should rename that line item because it's not utilities like water, sewer, electricity, natural. That's street lighting, and the power bill for any lights like that, like street lighting. So that flashing light. We don't have any other. We don't have any traffic signals that we're maintaining until the new one that just came on. Typically DOT's doing that, so this actuated flasher that's out at Cooper's Creek and Wildbriar, so Relief Cove, to add for the power of that and the rate increase, that's the increase in the line item, but it's our street lighting. So a lot of people probably have no idea that municipalities do that, but we're one of a lot of them out there that basically they cover the power bill on street lights. Here it's mostly 125, and then some of our town maintained roads.
So how does that work, like these new subdivisions? They put in the lights and then we take over paying for them?
Yeah, I don't think we have a lot of street lighting in there, but that's my understanding, and that comes in. So I guess we may have that being requested coming back in as well. Yeah, because once we take over street maintenance.
Oh, street, that's.
Yeah, the streets in there, which we haven't done yet in Sycamore Cottages. They're doing a walkthrough right now, and there's a bunch of punch list things that they want approved before they're going to take them over. So you may be hearing more about that, or we get a bunch of pushback from them. But we want to make. It's kind of why Eric was advising they didn't do the final surface course for asphalt and some things until they got closer to the end.
Right.
That they didn't want to do it that way. So, but yeah, street lighting, and so we have utility rates going up, and then in addition, signal first. Got an increase in M&R town facilities from 90,000 to 95. This is just due to the increased cost of items for that's maintaining town hall, the old PD building, where Parks and Rec maintenance is using, public works facilities. So that's all covered within M&R town facilities. Fuel expense increased from 30,000 to 45,000. This is due to increased consumption and rising fuel prices. So as we're picking up more households for trash collection, you're going to get some more fuel consumption on that as well. Landfill charges. So this is the municipal solid waste. Basically, everything you throw in the garbage, it's not recycled. When it goes to the landfill or the transfer station, we have to pay a tipping fee. So this is our cost for the tipping fees that go into waste management. So we've got a little bit of increase in tonnage with new households. It's going to increased tonnage too. I tell you, doing the recycling has helped to keep our tonnage down, as much as we can do to promote recycling. Excuse me, and then of course our recycling line increased from 110,520 up to 153 due to our new contract there with Kirby. The capital outlay line increased from 11,000 to 90,000, and that's for the equipment upgrades, the UTV and the lift gate that I mentioned, and the security upgrades in town hall. And then Powellville, so, this is our funding source for street resurfacing primarily. Powellville is determined by the number of road miles that we maintain and our population. It's 75% of the formula is based on population, 25% on street miles. Our street miles really haven't gone up. That's been pretty constant. So it runs through, they didn't give us the specific calculation on this. We get something to calculate it for the road miles and the population. They only gave us comments based on total appropriations from the state and what they're estimating, and not the very more specific formula. So based on what we received and what we're anticipating going into the general state appropriations that then comes back to municipalities, we're estimating at 215,000 and going up to 213, 215. We've been getting a decent amount of appropriation on it. And then we budget on the revenue and expense side, so that matches at 215. So it's Powellville, and it's been a good source for us, and we're doing our best to keep up with it, so the roads stay in decent shape, and I think we've been able to do that fairly well. Yeah. Yeah.
Just a quick question. Has recruitment and retention, staff members in public works been better?
It has. Yeah, we have had, don't jinx us, very good, I guess longevity maybe is the right word, but we're just, yeah.
But I would think that change we made to how we're distributing the cost of living would help them a great deal also.
Does help. And it'll help, and we're going to use that, like I said earlier, on our distribution, the way we calculate that for the new fiscal year as well. So that'll be a good thing. But no, we're fully staffed, in good shape. Parks and Recreation, so a moderate increase in our overall departmental from 713,962 to 770,154. So this increases our part-time salary here, to cover increases in hourly wages, and then we're bringing back the middle school camp program. So our summer day camp, we had the middle school component we added several years ago, took that off. The summer day camp's been so popular and so filled up, and waiting list, and there's not as many summer day camps in the county, so it's a real good service to the community here. Really helpful to parents, and our Parks and Rec runs a good summer day camp program, good quality activities for the kids. So we wanted to try to bring back the middle school component, so we've got that in there, so that's a little bit of the increase for part-time salaries. No new full-time positions requested this year. I've got the recommendation for the UTV, so it's like the Gator, that utility train vehicle, to replace the golf cart. They have a golf cart that's getting very worn out as well in Parks and Rec. And then replace with one of the Stag mowers, so that total cost is at $32,000.
Now, is that the same type of vehicle that the public works is going to be getting?
Yeah, some very similar. It might be a little bit bigger bed on it, just because they're involved a lot more.
Right.
It's bigger, yeah, there's more material maybe that we're transmitting around on there. It could wind up being almost the same exact thing. Parks and Rec, just hitting some of the line items here, the salary and fringe increase from COLA and merit adjustments. I mentioned the part-time salaries, that's going up from $94,048 to $100,000 for the hourly wages in the middle school camp. We have a lot of part-time assistants in that department, so that's why that's as high as it is. It's not just for the summer day camp program, but we also have park rangers that we're still using and permanent part-time assistants for general maintenance in the park facilities. Increase in utilities line from $32,000 to $33,000, and this is for all the utilities relative to Fillmore Community Park and then Kate's and Beats Park. So that's from 32 to 33,000. Fuel expense increased a little bit from 8,100 to 9,000 due to fuel costs going up. Summer day camp from 28,000 to 32,500, and this is just due to additional activities from the middle school program bringing up. This is covering field trips and all the other expenses in summer day camp. M&R vehicle expense increased from 3,000 to 5,000 with older vehicles. You'll see in CIP, it's in there for year 3 in the CIP to replace one of the pickup trucks that Parks and Maintenance uses. So hopefully that line maybe will come back down next year, but their 2 pickup trucks got quite old, or getting old.
We also maintain the bus.
Oh, I was thinking, yeah, that too.
Like tires on the bus, for instance.
In general, has the bus been holding up very
Yes.
well? Good.
Capital outlay, so I mentioned the UTV and the mower, so that's an increase from 14,000 to 32,000 to cover that. M&R equipment line increased from 7,000 to 8,000. This is just due to increase in maintenance costs. Arboretum park expenses from 1,000 to 2,000. This is due to increased activity in maintaining that area. We had some interest, remember last year, with some people wanting to get involved in sprucing up that area. We haven't had a lot of attention on it, but just so we have more capacity to hopefully attack that a little bit better this year, we've got some expenses programmed in. And that's Parks and Rec.
One other question, we've been talking about maybe going into a cost sharing with Fernley, put in a crosswalk. Where would that go? Would that go into our park, would it go into Parks and Rec? And have we budgeted for it, or should we?
We could, like right now. I just.
We haven't put it in yet.
No, we haven't put it in. We were just so far along in the budget process. That's why I suggested to Michael that maybe bring that back up this summer. We could put it in now if you want to do that. And it would probably under maybe professional services in that, or town facilities, probably professional services. I mean, we can put it where we want to put it. I mean,
I don't
it's
know
not
if we
really.
have to do it now, it's just.
Yeah, and it would be from unappropriated fund balance, which, fund balance is very strong right now. It's not a huge expense.
Right.
But yeah, good question. It is going to come back up, and we'll handle it as a separate agenda item.
I think it's a pretty sure thing that it's gonna happen, it's just a matter of when and how much it is.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that would be a really good improvement to use that crosswalk from a safety perspective, with the activity happening.
It'd still be in a private school. I mean, it's one that goes to public school, I can see it's paying for it, but if it being a private school, and it being the only people that benefit from it. I know it needs to be safety, but it just doesn't seem like it's Fletcher's responsibility.
But we do benefit from it in the long run. We're talking about the greenway, we're serious about that.
Yes,
It's gonna cross.
the long run for the Greenway is is the one.
And they're,
Is the one that is their truck.
they're donating their property to continue the greenway, so it's in our
I
best
didn't know,
interest.
I didn't know that. That's
It's
why I was
going on
saying,
their
that's why I asked
property.
the other night, where does Fletcher benefit from this? Well, if they're donating land for the greenway, then that's,
That's a big
that's,
jump.
that's a, yeah, especially for a $20,000 crosswalk.
Yeah.
I mean,
That was everything on Parks and Rec, so, excuse me, that concludes the regular operation, or operating budget part of the presentation, and I go into CIP next year. The next step in this would be a, much more condensed presentation for the June meeting, where we have some slides and some graphs. We'll try to put that information, I know that we talked a fair bit about on the comparison of what the actual tax bill would be from last year to this year, kind of cross-section, some of those, if that helps.
Yeah.
If you want that to be a part of the budget presentation then for the public hearing. So that's that.
And we didn't talk about it while you were in here, we talked about it during one of the breaks, but this other sheet that you have here,
Yeah.
it shows the amount of increases for all the community, all the municipalities. It's kind of, I think it's kind of important enough to mention that Fletcher's went up less than everybody else.
Well, if you look at the real, that's, when you're looking at a revaluation, you really want to look at so there's like 4 to 5 parts that make up
Right.
the property valuation, and it's not just real, but when they do revaluation, it's the real portion, which is the largest
Oh, yeah.
amount.
And then the business
Yeah.
property went down because of company
Yeah.
activities.
Yeah, so when you have those decreases like in business personal, individual personal, it can skew what the
Right.
overall increase is for
Gotcha.
the ad valorem tax base. So, yeah, you gotta look at just the real part. So if you look at the real, ours was, and this isn't everything here, I printed the sheet that shows Fletcher's. I was surprised some other parts of the county, how much their real values went up. A little bit more than, usually we're the highest, and there were some other areas that were a little bit higher, and just because of all the growth happening here. And our location to Buncombe County, I think, as well. So, with that, I will go into CIP.
I take a 5-minute break.
Yeah.
You want a motion?
Yes, please.
All right, there a motion to recess for 5
I
minutes?
move.
There's a motion, second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Y'all ready to get back
Yes.
going? All right, Mark, floor is yours.
All right, down the home stretch here. So capital improvement budget, so as you know, we do a 5-year capital improvement plan. This would be going into year 3 of the current 5-year CIP. We do an annual capital budget where we pull monies from a portion of the tax levy to fund it. So recommending the capital budget change, and this is because of reval, what's going on here, to shift some of what we normally set aside for tax rate and levy. We normally do 8.5 cents of the tax rate for CIP. And due to reval and just some of the other funding pressures here to cover all this, recommending it go to 7 cents, our rate be applied to CIP. 7 cents generates $1,226,589 for the current or upcoming fiscal year here. I recommend we normally are doing 6.5 cents to debt service, but then we do 5 cents dedicated for projects that are supported by debt, and then 2 cents for ones that are paid for with ago. The amount of tax levy available on the debt service side, so what 5 cents of that 7 cents would produce, it's $876,135. The amount of tax levy available for new projects without debt, so the pay-as-you-go side for 2 pennies would be $350,454. So next slide, I'm going to show you that the projects that we've got budgeted on debt service isn't as much as what the levy produces, so there's a little bit of a surplus there. So we had 3, but because of some county GASB requirements, we had to add a 4th. So one is town hall improvements project. The second is our Highway 25 land acquisition. The third is the garbage truck, which not this coming year, but the following will be our last year payment on it, because I think it was only a 3-year loan. And then copier lease payments. This is this auditing thing where our copier payments have to go into there, that we lease. The debt service for town hall is at just over $541,000 for this year. Debt service on the Highway 25 land acquisition projects, that's off the town center, that is just shy of $165,000, and then the debt service for the truck is at $102,734, and the copier lease is at $11,896. Our surplus debt service available then, so that prior slide I said how much that 5 cents produces on the levy. Well, if you take that and subtract what the total is for all these payments, we have a surplus available of $54,799. And I'd recommend payment to principal on our debt with that surplus debt service funds. Now, if you wind up increasing the amount of tax rate going to Fletcher Farm and Rescue, I would recommend we move that surplus over there for that. And we either could deal with it that way now, or we could raise the amount of fund balance that's appropriated to cover the difference. There's a couple different ways you can handle that without messing with the 28-cent tax rate or raising it up.
I'm just a little bit leery about paying off principal on some of these debts if we have loans that are substantially lower than what the current interest rate is. In other words, let's say a year or 2 down the road, we decide we need a new garbage truck, or we need a new brush lift truck or something. The interest rates are gonna be really high, and I'm not sure it's in our best interest to be paying off the low ones so we can take a high one. I would almost rather put that money into a fund where we're at least getting interest until larger expenses come up.
Because right now, the current interest rates we're getting on the capital management trust is higher annual percentage rate than what our loans are.
Loans, yeah.
It's a very valid point. We've just, our reserves are so good, we put so much money into the capital management trust that, I mean, this isn't going to make a big difference in helping us earn more interest in there. Not a huge amount, but knocking down the principal, doing a chunk payment like that gets that paid off a lot faster. So, and interest rates are likely going to go down too. So that's at least some of my thinking on that. You certainly could roll it to reserves. I don't want to say 6 of 1, but there's different ways you can approach it. Just the thing that's hanging out there is we don't know what the fire tax rate is going to be for the county, or by the county side.
I mean, that having a surplus debt service of $55,000, that's That's not much if something major comes up.
Yeah.
I mean, look at what we're paying on the garbage truck, $102,000 just for one truck. Now, I realize it was a short term, but
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, our reserves are so good right now that, I know we've been staying disciplined by doing large capital purchases out of CIP. The cutoff is 25,000. We've been trying to plan out, we've done that in our 5-year capital improvement plan. However, you know, at least right now, the town's in a position with reserves being so high that you could, you know, on the garbage truck or the brush truck.
could just buy it right out.
Yeah, just pay cash and not be, you know. Probably the biggest debt service thing on the horizon for us is something related to town center. So let's say, you know, we get the Highway 25 portion back under contract, and there's interest in the rest of the property here. We're probably better, and that road, having to connect that old King Creek down to Howard Drive.
Right.
We're probably better off moving facilities off. At a minimum, that Parks and Rec maintenance building, the green building comes down, but probably Public Works moving too. That's probably our next biggest expense. So something related to relocating and giving them new space and, you know, a better metal building. But that expense and then anything else related to improvements on here, if we negotiate a public-private partnership with a developer to do other improvements on the rest of the 40 acres.
Yeah.
So that's probably our biggest thing on the horizon right now. Then, so on the cash side, so what the 2 pennies are producing and what we've got in our 5-year CIP, year 3 has these 3 projects, and that's what we're going to try and fund. Police vehicles, 3 patrol cars at $137,000. Public Works utility tractor with attachments at $95,000. Parks and Rec maintenance pickup at $40,000. So those are 3 things that are pulled right from the CIP. And so after those 3 things are funded, that difference in money that's left based on what that 2 cents produces is there's a surplus here again of $78,454. And I've got the recommended payment to principal on loans, but you know, we could do something else. And again, the fire department rate thing is still kind of hanging over there. You know,
When do they typically come up with that? What the rate's gonna be for them from Henderson County?
So that Fire and Rescue Advisory Council, the fire departments have to present their budget to them, and they usually have what the rate's gonna be in there. And then the county, middle of the month, so May 17th, they're supposed to be reviewing what the fire department brings to them from the FRAC, from that Fire and Rescue Advisory Council. So I guess the FRAC has a recommendation as well. Most years, we kind of know what the rate is, because the rate isn't being adjusted in most years, other than revale here.
So we should know by the end of May.
Yes.
But the county has been getting a lot of flack from people about trying to remain revenue neutral,
Yeah.
so
Who knows?
they very well may somewhat undercut what the fire board comes up with.
Yeah, because
Oh, 'cause
it depends what they want.
Yeah.
It's just, if you're gonna go revenue neutral and help folks, which they're in a position, and we're in a position to do that too, thankfully. I don't know how they get away with that entirely with the fire departments, but, so that concludes CIP. And really concludes the budget presentation. The next step, I'll get another value update from the county, from the assessor's office. We need to know what obviously the county's going to do fire tax rates for the districts. And really not much else on the expense side to be working on. So really, I got to publish our recommended budget. So that'll be available for public comment and review by June 1st. We'll advertise that and advertise in advance to the public hearing, which will be June 12th at our regular meeting. So unless you all have any questions or anything else you want to talk about, that concludes it. I did have one other thing. Well, I don't know if I can bring it up since she was not here. I'll get with you, I guess, in June, maybe I'm going to talk about the concert, trying to do one maybe in August over at Lucas, but we're really supposed to just do what we're here for the special call meeting, unless everyone's here to add something on, so. That's it. Okay, thank you for being here, thank you for your attention, thank you, and also to our staff, and Heather and Christine, for helping do a lot of background work to get us here, so, and aren't we done in a good time?
I mean, it goes to show how good they're at doing their job now. Like I said, we used to take 3 days to do this.
I think that's all hard work. It's not,
Yeah, we were just talking this morning about the 3-day program. Now we're going to do a 3-hour program. That's awesome. Well, the budget worked out.
And we really are, folks, again, fortunate to have what we have as far as how broad our tax base is. I mean, I look at some other parts of the state, some areas. Henderson County is very fortunate, Fletcher in particular, because, between our sales tax, our property tax, the industry, manufacturing we have here, all those things, put us in a good position here to be doing.
Kind of like in the stock market, we've got a pretty good diversified portfolio here between housing and industry and stuff. So when one comes up short, the other one usually helps make up for it.
Yeah.
Well, and it is public service recognition week, so thank you everybody.
Thank you.
Any other business? Well, I give our motion to adjourn.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.